Senator Back.
Deputy President, as you know, the pivotal, guiding and overwhelming document which dictates everything that we do in this parliament is the Australian Constitution. And I quote from Clause 7 dealing with the Senate, and it says, and I quote, "The Senate shall be composed of senators of each state, directly chosen by the people of the state, voting until the parliament otherwise provides as one electorate." And this is absolutely fundamental and at the centre of the issue we are debating today, the Commonwealth Electoral Amendment Bill 2016. Section 7, Deputy President, says, and it demands, that senators be chosen directly by the people. So Senate reform is about upholding the integrity of the Constitution. And if anybody need be in any doubt as to the fact that the integrity of this Constitution has been trashed, you need only have a look at the voting in Victoria in 2013 of the Senate, in which one candidate received 0.51% of the votes, being 17,122, and is here today, and I must say makes a very, very worthwhile contribution. But my point is that another candidate received 389,745 votes, being 11.5% of that particular vote, and that person missed out. And if anybody can convince me that we have a system at the moment that upholds the principles of the Senate and the Constitution in terms of integrity, then they will have a lot of effort convincing me. There were, in fact, 3,499,438 people who registered a vote in Victoria, and if you take away the 17,122, Deputy President, there would be 3,482,316 wondering where their vote went, and that is why we are here today. It is the case, as we know, that it's a fundamental principle of voting systems that a voter intends to vote for the candidate or the party with whom their final vote rests. And unfortunately, because of a capacity to manipulate the system as we now have it, as indeed the Honourable Gary Gray said in his contribution, the process now fails that test. The statistics I just quoted to you, I believe, are absolutely relevant. What happens now? For those who don't understand, under the current system, we are only allowed to number one box when voting above the line, and 97% of all Australians vote above the line. Only 3% go through the agony of trying to actually allocate below the line. But of course, once we have put our number one above the line currently, we then lose control of the allocation of our preferences. This is all done opaquely behind closed doors, and you, the voter, have got no idea at all where your second or subsequent preferences go. Under the reforms, this will change. This group voting ticket arrangement, according to deals that are negotiated, will go, and so it should go. Because we've had the situation, and we have it now, and it's resulted in some of the people being here, a plethora of new single-issue and front parties, some with the same membership and office bearers as existing parties, often lodging 3 different group voting tickets, have actually manipulated the system, and it has got to stop. It's got to be changed. Deputy President, I've heard in this place the nonsense about 3 million votes being lost. If you take that to your logical conclusion, if you voted for a person in the lower house or you voted for a party in the lower house that was unsuccessful, the logical extension says that your vote was wasted. Well, it wasn't wasted. It wasn't wasted. You had the opportunity under our electoral system to indicate the person and the party for whom you wish to vote. And anybody who says to you that that was a voided or wasted exercise does not understand parliamentary democracy. Your vote was highly valued. Highly valued. The Reform Committee, the Electoral Reform Committee on which I sat following the 2013 election and then the rerun of the Senate in 2014, had three very, very fine Labor Party statesmen, members of that committee. The then Senator, the Honourable John Faulkner, who I believe was the father of the Senate at that time, Mr Alan Griffiths from the other place, and the Honourable Gary Gray, the member for Brand from my home state of Western Australia. There could not be three people with more knowledge of the parliamentary democratic system of this country than those three, and I regarded it as a pleasure to serve on that committee with them. The point I want to make, Deputy President, is that they joined other committee members, of which I was one, Senator Rhiannon, I recall, Senator McDonald, and we were unanimous. We were unanimous in the recommendations that that committee, under the chairmanship of the now Speaker, Tony Smith, came forward to the Parliament to advise, and it has been the basis of that report and its recommendations that have formed the principal elements of the legislation we're debating today. But why? Why then do we have our political opponents on the other side opposing what was a unanimous report and recommendations? Well, Deputy President, I say to the young people above me, one day they might end up interested in the horse racing industry, as indeed I am and have come from. And there's an old saying in horse racing, if there's a horse called self-interest running, for heaven's sake make sure you back it, because you know it's trying. And if you have a look at the race book, and if you see under the ownership the name W. Shorten, and if you see as the trainer P. Wong and the jockey D. Cameron, for heaven's sake get the chequebook out. Because as you can see in this case, that particular party have totally trashed the recommendations of a unanimous report to the Parliament of three very senior people. I haven't heard any criticism of those three. And as has been quoted by Senator Xenophon in his contribution a few moments ago, some of the points made by the Honourable Gary Gray are absolutely prescient to this debate, and I just felt very, very sorry to hear that man in his final words in his contribution on the 24th of February have to say the Labor Party will be opposing this bill. It is fundamental that this is passed. So, for those who don't understand, how does it change? Well, it changes in this way, that instead of just putting one vote above the line, you now have the option, not the obligation, you now have the option of putting 1 and 2, or 1 and 2 and 3, or 2, 3, 4 or 5, up to 6, so that you, not some gamer in the back room, not some vote whisperer, but you, the voter, and you, when you become voters, through you, Deputy President, will control your preferences so that you know where your vote goes. And you won't be one of that 3,482,316 people in Victoria who thought that you were voting for somebody else to see a 0.51%. Equally, it will be the option, as I understand it, that below the line a person will be able to indicate only the number of preferences that they want. That's to be debated in this place. There is one other point which I think is very valid, Deputy President, the recommendation that the option be there to place the logo of the party against its name. We know there are many people not of English-speaking background. We know there are many people in our community eligible to vote, fine Australian citizens, who are illiterate. And we know from the experience of other democratic countries that the use of a logo or the use of different colours is actually valuable in allowing that person again to indicate through the Electoral Commission where they want their vote to go. What is going to be the outcome? I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be, Deputy President, neither does anyone else. We might end up with 2 Greens from each state. We might end up with 3 Xenophons. I don't know where we're going to end up. But what I can say to you is that the system at the moment is broken. The system is being abused. This is the essence of our democracy, Deputy President. At the moment, that requirement, under Section 7 of the Constitution, that the Senate shall be composed of senators for each state directly chosen by the people, of the state is being abused, and it needs to be changed. And it's very disappointing for me to see the political opportunism of our opponents simply thinking that they can wedge a scenario when they were part of a unanimous report with recommendations from 3 of their most senior and most experienced and long-term statesmen is absolutely beyond me, and I recommend this amendment to the Senate.